You've probably realized by now that the world doesn't work the way you were told. Deals are made in the shadows, truth is twisted against you, and social games run on rules no one explains. The secret behind it all is leverage, a simple concept that takes years to master. Today, we're breaking down how empires, lawyers, and even your Tinder dates use leverage to control outcomes, how you can recognize it, protect yourself, and turn it to your advantage. The world isn't fair, and it never was. If you're waking up to that fact and are tired of being outplayed, this is for you. To start, let me tell you a story that'll illustrate the principles you need to know in order to navigate social dynamics like a master. In the 1930s, when oil was discovered in the sands of Arabia, the rulers of those barren kingdoms seemed like minor players. They had no machines, infrastructure, engineers, or global networks. The Americans held the rigs, pipelines, markets, and military power, which was vital because it would be impossible to build anything in the Middle East without security. By every measure of raw strength, the Arabs were dependents, forced to be content with collecting royalties while others carried away their wealth. But the Saudis were smart. They understood the value of what lay beneath their soil, but that acquiring power would require patience. It had to be cultivated slowly, invisibly, so they didn't make the mistake of trying to take everything all at once. That would have brought a retaliation and fallout they weren't prepared to handle. Instead, they played the long game. They welcomed the Americans, even flattered them, creating an environment so favorable to foreign investment that the money never stopped flowing. They took the infrastructure, the security, the technology, and studied it. By the way, the primary company they learned from was none other than Standard Oil, the legacy of the great businessman John D. Rockefeller. And rather than depend on his system, they worked to make it their own. All the while they negotiated, first for a slightly higher royalty, then a demand for local hiring, later a joint venture. Each decade the balance tilted just a little bit more, keeping it subtle enough that the Americans barely noticed until it was too late. The Saudis mastered the art of playing rivals against one another. If one company resisted, another would be invited in. No threat, no open rebellion, just patient, relentless pressure on the supply line. By the 1970s, the situation had flipped entirely. The oil embargo showed the world who truly controlled the lifeblood of modern economies when the Saudi Aramco rose from a joint venture into the most valuable company on earth. The Desert Kingdom, once dependent, now dictated terms to superpowers. So what can we take from this on a practical level? Lesson 1. Core power. Don't confront it. When you lack the strength to resist, welcome the stronger hand. Let them build, protect, and invest. Show gratitude and humility to encourage their continued involvement, instead of letting your pride threaten their ego. Their confidence blinds them to the fact that they're deepening your foundation, not theirs. Strategic submission today creates independence tomorrow. When you're weak, never try to win by force. Embrace what you need, learn from it, and use time as your ally. Restriction can be your prison, or it can be the lever that will one day let you turn the empire in your direction. Lesson 2. Advance by inches, not leaps. In jiu-jitsu, we go for position before submission. Trying to force a technique without a proper position leaves you trying to fight strength with strength, rather than using leverage to your advantage. For more on this, check out my last video, Positioning for Power. Never try to seize all at once what your opponent believes is his. Instead, shift the balance gradually. Negotiate one clause, 1 percentage point, one concession at a time. Like water carving a stone, the pressure is invisible until the shape is changed. Also, understand what you're negotiating. Like, don't tell your boss that you want more money for the same work. Instead, show him how valuable you could be given the additional opportunity, and then show proof of that based on your current work, instead of just threatening to quit like an amateur. Also, notice the restraint demonstrated in this story. The Saudis never overplayed their hand, never demanded so much that their partners walked away or attempted a hostile takeover. They played restriction like a game, knowing that they lacked armies and industry, so they used time, patience, and negotiation as their weapons. They embraced help when it was needed, but always positioned themselves to slowly take the reins rather than remain dependent. And even now, they don't rest on the illusion of permanence. Oil made them rich, yes, but they know resources run dry, so they're diversifying. They pour billions into tech, finance, and AI, refusing to be remembered as merely the desert kings who lived off of a single treasure. They're playing the long game, building the future while others are content to drain the present. So don't try to change someone's mind in one argument. Ask questions, plant doubt, get one small concession at a time. In business, negotiate the little terms first, and the rest can snowball once momentum is on your side. Be patient and remember that empires are not built overnight. In a way, the Saudis continued Rockefeller's legacy. He didn't dominate because he had more oil wells than anyone else. He dominated because he made good deals. He made competitors partners, offered railroads guaranteed shipments, and tied every piece of the oil chain back to his company. By the time he started monopolizing and applying real pressure, he didn't just own oil. He owned the routes it traveled on, the prices it sold for, and the future on which it depended. The Saudis took the same approach. Once they had wrestled back control of the oil fields, they didn't isolate themselves. They formed OPEC, an alliance with other producing nations, so that prices and supply could be set collectively. America had taught them how empires are built, not just with resources, but with networks, alliances, and strategy. And again, they didn't take what America offered them as a handout either. They learned, planned, and applied. Compare this, on the other hand, with Venezuela. They too had immense oil wealth, but instead of discipline, they chased immediate rewards, fell to corruption, short-term gratification, and a lack of strategy. The result? Collapse, not empire. Leverage is not just about what you have, but how you use it. The Saudis let the Americans build the infrastructure and provide security while learning from the stronger power instead of fighting it outright. Then, piece by piece, they renegotiated, reinvested, and built new levers that gave them the ability to walk away from the table if they needed to. They treated oil not as a prize to be consumed, but as a tool to build lasting power. Venezuela had the same gift and squandered it. They grabbed too much too quickly, scared off partners, spent recklessly, and became greedy. When oil prices collapsed, so did their position. So don't chase quick control or short-term comfort. Use what you have now to start controlling the board, diversify your power, and play the long game. So let's talk about how to actually do this on a tactical level. First, understand that people don't make decisions by logic alone, if at all. They decide based off of emotion and then justify with logic afterwards. If you can really get this, you already can tug on an important string. Facts matter far less than the feeling you create in the other person. The easiest way to create that feeling is by working with the shortcuts already hardwired into the human mind. This is where the tactical psychology aspect comes in. For example, people fear loss more than they desire gain. They become anxious for what seems scarce. They defer, often unconsciously, to symbols of authority. They copy what feels popular and cling to whatever they've already said yes to in public, even when it hurts them. These aren't weaknesses to complain about, they're tools you can exploit. The most effective operators don't force compliance. Working with the mind instead of against it, they give the illusion of choice. They question and redirect until the other side stumbles into the conclusion that serves them, and then validate it as if it was their idea all along. The game is ultimately about perception, not truth. So you have to manage how others see you, project confidence, cultivate scarcity, and communicate value. At the same time, you need to strip away the facade they're presenting to you. Ignore their charm, their performance, and their emotional pool. Find the facts, the desires they keep secret, and the weaknesses they're desperate to protect, because that's often where you gain the leverage. Think about it like this. Lawyers don't win cases by sheer volume of arguments. They win by finding the hinge. A case can look overwhelming, but if one witness breaks under questioning or one key piece of evidence is disqualified, the entire structure weakens. They're not pushing against the whole wall, they're searching for the crack that makes it collapse. Again, the fight is never just about the facts. A skilled lawyer reframes the situation so the jury is no longer asking, did he do it, but can we be certain that he did it? And that changes everything. Add this to the emotional pool, things like planting doubt, stirring outrage, winning sympathy. Judges and juries might believe they're acting on reason, but they move on feeling just like everyone else. Lawyers also use time and pressure as leverage. They drag proceedings out, stack paperwork, and raise the cost of resistance, then offer a clean settlement that feels like escape. It's the same principle used in guerrilla warfare. They don't fight the army head on. They cut the supply lines until surrender looks easier. In law, as in life, leverage isn't about overpowering someone, but about identifying the single point they can't afford to lose and pressing it until the rest gives way. Now, you may be thinking, that's super interesting, but how does it help me in the day-to-day? What's the application to office politics or my dating life? Well, I'm glad you asked. Manipulative people in general argue the way lawyers do. They're not interested in winning on every point. They look for the weak hinge, the emotional supply line, the insecurity, the secret dream. Once they find it, they don't need to overwhelm you with logic. They only need to press that one spot until you crumble. They also understand that arguments are never really about facts, but about perception. A manipulative person will shift the frame so you are no longer arguing about what happened, but about how you made them feel, for example. They create doubt, weaponize guilt, and force you to defend yourself on their terms. And if you accept their frame, you've already lost, even if you're right. Finally, they apply pressure. They drag things out until you're exhausted, dredge up past mistakes, move the goalpost, and escalate the cost of continuing the fight until it's just not worth it anymore. Then they offer a way out. An apology that you have to give, a compromise that favors them, or a settlement that looks like peace but leaves them in control. The principle is always the same. Don't fight the real battle when you can just bleed your opponent into surrender. Also, don't be afraid of using leverage. Be ethical, obviously, but understand that this is just the nature of the beast. Women draw men in emotionally, then pull back. And it works because it tends to make the man chase. The harder he chases, the more invested he feels, much like a gambler at a slot machine, and probably with about the same level of success. Men, on the other hand, maintain leverage by holding back commitment, projecting detachment, and signaling strength. Provided the woman is actually interested, this turns the tables. It forces her to pursue and to become invested. The underlying principle is simple. Whoever needs less has more control. Of course, you don't want to get stuck playing this game. Seduction should be a dance with rhythm and exchange, not a one-sided weapon. So how do we make sure that we're using the right levers on our Bumble adventures? Well, remember that most people prioritize shallow leverage, looks, charm, personality, but those are fragile. Someone hotter, richer, and more entertaining is going to come along at some point. In other words, the oil fields are going to dry up, if you know what I mean. What lasts is character, strength, consistency, and trustworthiness, patience, temperance, things like that. These provide real value that cannot be easily replaced. And I'm not saying you should ignore looks and charm, just be smart about your priorities. Personality is like the aesthetic of a house. It can be fun, cute, and inviting, but if it's a money pit with mold in the basement and snakes in the attic, it's probably not going to be a home. The same is true in relationships. Personality draws attention, and I'm not dismissing that, but character sustains respect. If you attract with personality, looks, or money alone, the leverage always belongs to the next person who can make your partner laugh harder or feel better. If you build and choose based on your character, you create something that's difficult to replicate. So remember, leverage doesn't always come from resources. You gain it by inches, not leaps, by patience, strategic framing, exploiting bias, and reinvesting wins into durable assets. Those who chase quick success lose it. Those who play the long game own it. Like the Saudis, embrace help, treat it as your apprenticeship, and take back control inch by inch. Don't grab everything at once and never outshine the master. Thank you guys so much for listening. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. See you soon.